Do you really think Africans dislike France? I will be waiting for your responses in the comments section.
The relationship between Africa and France is complex and varies significantly across countries and contexts. While it would be inaccurate to generalize that Africa hates France, there is growing resentment in some African nations towards French influence, particularly in former colonies.
This sentiment often stems from historical, political, and economic grievances. Reasons behind the resentment.
1. Colonial legacy. Many African countries were colonized by France, and the legacy of colonialism, including exploitation and forced labor, has left deep scars. 2. Post-Colonial influence. After independence, France maintained close ties with its former colonies through Françafrique, a policy that critics argue perpetuated economic dependency, political interference, and support for authoritarian regimes. 3. Military presence. French military bases and interventions, often justified by counter-terrorism efforts, are seen by some as neo-colonial, undermining African sovereignty.
For economic ties, the use of the CFA franc, a currency linked to the euro and controlled by the French treasury, is viewed by many as a tool of economic control over francophone African countries.
5. Perception of arrogance. France's actions in international diplomacy, such as influencing decisions in Africa without significant local input, have been perceived as dismissive of African agency.
There is rising nationalism and anti-French sentiment. In recent years, a wave of nationalism and calls for greater self-determination have swept across Africa.
Protests against French influence have been particularly vocal in countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, where military juntas have explicitly rejected French support in favor of new alliances, such as with Russia.
Kindly give us a thumbs up. However, it's essential to note that not all African countries harbor resentment toward France.
Some, like Nigeria and Ivory Coast, maintain strong partnerships, viewing France as a key ally in economic and security matters. Additionally, African diasporas in France contribute to cultural and social exchanges that foster mutual understanding.
In conclusion, the tension between Africa and France is not universal but reflects specific historical and contemporary dynamics.
The relationship is evolving as many African nations push for equitable partnerships that respect their sovereignty and aspirations for development. France's willingness to adapt its approach could determine the future of its ties with the continent.